Hello and welcome back. I'm Nicole, a cottage witch, and today I'm doing the Tea Shop Tarot tag. This is a VR to Antoinette Tarot. Actually, I think, is it Antoinette Tarot and Jewelry? I'll link her down below. And also kind of Mad Witch, whose video was the first one I watched. And this is sort of inspired by the coffee house decks that Amidst the Grey did. I think it was last year. Was it last year? What is time? Anyway, I'll link those lovely folks down below, and the prompts and everything. So the first prompt is an English breakfast tea, something zesty, refreshing that wakes you up and gets the brain working. Oh, and if you're new here, I tend to do everything in both tarot and books. So if you don't like books, this might not be the place for you, with apologies. English breakfast tea. Zesty, refreshing, wakes you up, gets the brain working. So for tarot, I chose this one. This is the Our Tarot, and it is refreshing to me. It's a collage deck, which I love. It's bright and colorful and lively, but each card features a different woman, and a lot of them I do not know, and so this requires some brain work. I really need to study the guidebook more. Some people like Ada Lovelace and Nefertari I've heard of, but Pearl Primus I have not heard of. But I do find that the people that they pick that I know of, I think really match the cards exceptionally well. I love Wangari Maathai. If you've never read her book, it's phenomenal. She was an environmentalist who won the Nobel Peace Prize. From Kenya. Amazing woman, very good book. Anyway, that's the one that I picked for what wakes me up and gets my brain working. And for books corresponding to that prompt, I picked this one. This is Plants Have So Much to Give Us, All We Have to Do Is Ask. Anishinaabe Botanical Teachings by Mary Siisip Geniusz. And it's wonderful. It's an absolutely incredible book, and both Mary Siisip Geniusz and her mentor Kiwi Dinakwe were both ethnobotanists and professors at universities, but also medicine women in the Anishinaabe tradition, and so they were sort of well ahead of their time in terms of opportunities in academia for Indigenous women, and they killed it. And they do both of those things. They do both the Western science and the traditional teachings, and you can't have, in this book, you can't have the one without the other. You can't have the medicinal uses for plants without talking about the stories that describe how humans came to have these plants or came into be in relationships with them, or how certain plants came to be a certain way, depending on how much trouble Nana Bojo caused on any given day, usually. But it's a beautiful, beautiful book. It goes through many different plants. There are so many good stories. So you can see a lot of Anishinaabe Moan names when she talks about cedar. You know, there's the Latin name, the Anishinaabe Moan name, and the English name. It is footnoted along the sides here. And then it's an interwoven combination of Western medicine and Anishinaabe teachings, and it's beautiful. So these are the few pages on cedar, and by few I mean many, because it's a very, very important plant to them. So I feel like this gets my brain working in a way because it challenges perceptions. It's not overly academic to read, though. It's very easy to read. They are both academics, but it's written in a very conversational style. So it's not difficult to read, but yeah, I think it gets the brain working in terms of challenging assumptions that we might have of which form of medicine is quote-unquote better, and what our relationships with plants could look like. So that is English breakfast tea. And the fact that it's called English is not lost on me. Number 2, the everyday or afternoon tea. A deck that's simple, accessible, and gets the job done. And so for decks, I picked the Light Sears, which I think everybody has seen before. I have edged it in this turquoise color. I love this deck. I've toyed with the idea of getting the mini, and I think if I ever did readings for other people and needed a travel tarot, I'd probably do that, but I just read for myself these days. And I'm quite happy for it to stay like that for the foreseeable future, so. But yes, this is accessible, works well for a lot of people. It's very colorful. It's, I don't know, it's a good way to get going with tarot. And yeah, and it's, you know, reasonably priced in a world where you can get really expensive tarot decks. It's financially accessible to people as well. And for books, I chose this one, The Path to Wild Food, Edible Plants and Recipes for Canada. So this is one of those books you can get at like the grocery store or wherever. I will, before I forget, lead with, if you're gonna buy some sort of guidebook about eating wild food, identifying plants, make sure it's written by not AI. There are so many of these books that are knocked off that are written by AI now. So look up the author. Lone Pine is a known publisher of these books. They're a respectable publisher of these books. People know who they are and trust them. But there are a lot of new made-up publishers that you cannot find a website for. So if you can't find a website for the publisher, and also if the author has published like 37 books in the last 37 days, be really, really skeptical, because it would be very dangerous to eat the wrong thing. On that note, I do think these books are pretty accessible because, I mean, you can get them at the grocery store, you can get them on Amazon, wherever. They're not expensive. And they, at least in North America, you can get one for like every region that you live in, except maybe the Arctic. I don't know about that one. And it's easy language, and nothing gets too like outrageously complicated. There are a lot of pictures and helpful illustrations for identification. Everything is very clearly ordered. There's some recipes. They're just a great way to like dip your toes into this world, if this is what you're interested in. And it does get the job done. I mean, I wouldn't maybe use it if you're completely new to this and have no idea what like red currants look like. I'm not sure I'd use this as the only source of information to identify them, because you don't want to eat the wrong red berries. But it's a good way to sort of get an idea, get a lay of the land, as it were. I love bear berries. They're lovely. They also feature in Plants Have So Much to Give Us. So these are my everyday afternoon tea. Number 3 is a special blend, a deck that you need to take your time over to uncover the layers. And this has layers. This is the Tarot Avatara, inspired by Frida Kahlo, who I love. I've read a biography of her life that the movie was based on recently, and she was a fascinating woman. Not an easy life, but fascinating. Anyway, as you can see, there's a lot going on here. These are not minimalist in any way. So there's a lot to notice. There's a lot to pay attention to. And I do think there are a lot of layers to uncover. I've had this for, I don't know, maybe a year and a bit. And it's just, every time I look at it, there's just so much, so many new things, so many things. It is slightly Thoth inspired, I guess. It does have some RWS bits and pieces, but I think a lot of it is Thoth-y-ish, kinda. Especially in tone, like a lot of the colors in a lot of the cards. There's she put some thought into this one. And I love it so much. So that's a special blend. And oh, and the sun got stuck at the bottom. I mean, that's so beautiful. I love that. And then for books, I went with The Witch's Cabinet by Corinne Boyer, because you really do need to take your time with this. There's so much. It's such a good book, and I love it a lot. The subtitle is Plant Lore, Sorcery, and Folk Tradition, and it is an incredible book of plant folklore. It's you can see I've got many a tab on the side here, and oh, and she's, I think, is it maybe her husband who does these illustrations? I can't remember, but they're incredible. It's so good. It's so good. This is the book that made me want all of her books. So I've been on a quest to try and find them at reasonable prices. I have issues with her publisher and how they operate. But that's a different discussion. It's amazing. It's very well footnoted. It's so thorough. Like, it's as thorough as a book this size can be. It's incredible. But it is the sort of thing where I think I will have to read it at least a couple more times, because I just don't think I got everything out of it that you can get out of it in one read. I don't think that's possible with this one. So yeah, I'll have to spend more time with it. The next prompt is Mint Tea. The refreshingly good reader, well received. So for this one, I picked Herbcrafter's Tarot. I could have picked, I think, the Lightseers for this one, but I couldn't have picked this one for the everyday one because it's not quite as accessible, in that you do kind of need to know something about plants or refer to the guidebook, which is phenomenal. It's an incredible guidebook. It's one of my all-time favorites. It's not quite so obvious, though, what everything is. Like, you do need to have an idea. I mean, everybody knows what dandelions are, I think, but not everybody knows what cottonwoods are and why they might be appropriate for the star. But I do think their choices are just so good. And it is a very well-received deck. Like, the people who like it, who like these sorts of things, seem to agree that it's a very, like, high-quality, well-done deck. Even actually, if a deck, you know, is not for a person specifically. I haven't heard people make complaints about the sort of the quality of this deck. It's not quite as accessible because you do need to know something about plants, but it's so good, and I think generally well received. This is one of my favorite cards, Cannabis for Justice, because it's been the cause of so many injustices, particularly in the US, I think, with the incarceration rate of Black Americans, but even in Canada, it's been a source of considerable injustice. So to have that as justice is amazing. This is also one of my favorites. Death for Marigold. Yeah. I'll have to get this deck out. Oh, when? Soonish. I keep thinking it's on, like, it's February. Well, no, it's March. I'm wrong. It's March now. So I keep thinking it's almost spring, but I live in Canada, so really it's not almost spring. It will be properly spring in, like, May. Maybe April with climate change. Yeah, we're not there yet. The book I chose for Mint Tea is Braiding Sweetgrass, because it's been exceptionally well received. I don't think I've ever heard anybody complain about this, actually. And it's so good. It is refreshing to read this sort of, because this book also combines Indigenous women. It's by an Indigenous woman, but it combines Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. And it's beautiful. It's so beautiful. I love this book so much that I got a copy in French so I can reread it someday. My list of books to read is just so long, so that'll take me a while. Before I get to that. Next is Earl Grey, a classic, sophisticated, a bit fussy with hidden floral undertones. So I don't have a lot in the way of sophisticated decks because I just don't do sophisticated, but I think this is as close as I get. I'm not sure if it's a bit fussy. It does have hidden floral undertones. See, as you can see in some of the cards. I think in this one too. Yeah, in this one as well. Is that a, no, that's the card. I'm not sure if there's a light reflecting there for a second. But I do think it's sort of one of the more sophisticated decks that I've got, with the keyword and then the two sort of opposing forces, I guess. And it's mostly black and white with bits of color occasionally. Here's another Frida card. Oh yeah, that's her horse. Okay, I get it. Yeah, so this is my Earl Grey. And then for books, because I thought it was funny, because I'm a dork, I got Folk Witchcraft out. So that's about as sophisticated as I get, really. But it has become a classic already. When was this written? I meant to check that. I don't think it's terribly old. 2019, yeah, so not very old, but it's sort of already become a classic in the world of folk witchcraft. He is a well-respected author, Roger J. Horn, and it's so good. It is so good. It's just it's a fantastic sort of general overview, introduction, dip your toes in and get to know the world. But it's sort of already become a classic, and it's got, as sort of introductory books go, it's got a lot more substance than some of the more maybe Instagrammable ones, let's say. So that's the Earl Grey. And then number 6 is Sencha Rose Green Tea, a deck that's rich, indulgent, and makes you feel a bit extra. So this is my, rich, indulgent, and a bit extra deck. And this is The Weird of Sarah Howard. And I'm just realizing that with this deck in particular, with my puzzle background here, it's gonna get a bit busy. But it is. I mean, I think everything Gabby Angus West does is a bit extra. She doesn't seem to do anything by halves, which I appreciate. And it's so beautiful. I love it. I love her book. It's also a playing card deck. As you can see, this is the 3 of diamonds. This is the 4 of spades. But it's like the most extra playing card deck of all time. It's just like, that is not a normal Ace of Clubs. It's just not. It's very indulgent and very rich, and I love it. Very summery. So that's the deck. I may have to edge it in something colorful at some time, but one day. The book I chose for that is Botanical Curses and Poisons, The Shadow Lives of Plants, partly because the cover is just a bit extra. It's got this sort of foiling, bronzy, orangey sort of situation going on. Yeah. And the cover design is beautiful. It's got the little ribbon bookmark. And it's just a really well produced, beautiful book. Yeah. So it is, it's a bit indulgent and a little bit extra. It does not have to be this. It doesn't have to quite do this, but it does. And I think I've read it twice now. And I may read it again sometime. And by read, I mean I think I may listen to this as an audiobook, despite the fact I have this beautiful copy. Yeah, this is the Sencha Rose Green Tea. The next one is Nettle Tea, a deck that's balanced and objective. I also find Nettle Tea to be quite nurturing, and so for balanced and nurturing, I picked the Tarot Racine, The Roots of Asia, which I think is not available in English anymore, but you can find it on eBay in like French and German sometimes. And it's beautiful. It's got like bits of cubism every now and again. I love the color palette. Love it. But it is a Buddhist, it's a deck with a Buddhist worldview instead of the sort of traditional Christian European one, which I really like. Which in some ways balances things out, because so many decks do have Christian symbolism in them. And this deck just demonstrates that it's, you know, like it's not wrong if they do, it's just not necessary to maintain sort of those Christian images. You can look at it through a different lens. And maybe that's more objective. I don't know. I don't know if anything's really objective. Maybe. Maybe it is. Oh, I'm bad at tuck boxes. Okay. And then for balanced and objective books, whoops, this one, which actually is surprisingly objective despite the fact he has owned a tea plantation. So this is a brief history of tea, which I think everybody who drinks tea should at least sort of have a passing awareness of, even if, you know, you only ask ChatGPT for a history of tea, because it's pretty incredibly violent. That was the takeaway from this book. It looks like a serene sort of picture on the front. It is not. The history of tea is bloody. It's so brutal. It's sort of like the history of chocolate and the history of sugar and really many other things. But anyway, yeah, I do think it's a pretty objective book, and it goes into a lot of that history, and I don't know, I just think in order to be a well-balanced, like, human, having sort of an awareness, especially in such a globalized world where it's so easy to buy things and not know where they come from, it's in order to be a responsible citizen, it's good to start to get a glimpse into what happens when you can't see what's happening. So yeah, that's pretty good book. I like that one. My books are falling over here. That's great. Next is Lady Grey, a deck that puts you in your place with a hint of sweetness. And for that, I chose the Seventh Sphere Marseille, because I just do find Marseille to be very direct. Of course, I've also been reading Camelia Elias's book, Read Like the Devil, which is also going to put you in your place. Perhaps not with a hint of sweetness, but I love her book. It's so good. She's a character all by herself. Like, she is. And her style of writing is super fun. Anyway, not the point. The point is, I think Marseille decks, more than any other decks that I've used, just get to the point. There's no messing around with, like, subtext and what ifs and that sort of thing. It's just, like, if you want directness, this is gonna do it. It's not messing around. But this deck is very sweet. Like, it is a very pretty deck, and I mean, I love the color palette. Look at that color palette. And the sort of rose gold edges. It's so beautiful. And the gilding is really beautifully done. Like, it feels really nice to use. And I do it. So yeah, really enjoy these cards. The book I picked for this is Sheila Watt Cloutier's The Right to Be Cold. One woman's story of protecting her culture, the Arctic, and the whole planet. So she's Inuit. And it is a direct book. It's in some ways quite a brutal book. There's a lot of suffering in the Arctic right now because of climate change. And this is not as recent a book. When was this written? 2015. So it's almost a decade old, and they were suffering then. And she doesn't mince words about that. She's very clear. But she's not malicious or anything. Like, it's not a ranty book. She seems like actually quite a lovely human. But also there's a lot at stake, and she's aware of that. And so she's not messing around. So this is bits of memoir, but also a lot of just sort of talking about what's happening in the Arctic, how we got to the point where the Arctic is in the state that it's in, and maybe what we can do about it, and should have been doing about it since it came out in 2015. But we're not. So, on that optimistic note, the next one is Chai Latte, a deck that's warm, cozy, and nurturing. And the Gentle Tarot in a tin is my Chai Latte, because it's warm, cozy, and nurturing, if anything ever was. It's got these lovely warm matte goldish edges. It's all in order. Oh yeah, because I used it for the, Drop 'em 78 at the end of last year, and I haven't used this particular one since. But it's my forever deck that I will always have forever and ever and always love. I can't imagine not loving this deck, because it is so warm. It's so gentle and cozy, and it is nurturing, I think. Like, it's not pretending everything's coming up roses, but you know, sometimes you deserve to take a break. And but even when things are difficult, I feel like there's a care was taken in the production of this deck to make sure that the reader would feel cared for, I think. And it's so beautiful. So my Chai Latte book is, oh, everything's falling apart now. You Are the Medicine, 13 Moons of Indigenous Wisdom, Ancestral Connection, and Animal Spirit. Guidance by Asha Frost. She is Indigenous. Where is she from? She's Chippewa of Nawash First Nation. I don't know where that is. She lives on Anishinaabe, Huron-Wendat, and Haudenosaunee territory. Is that Ontario? That might be Ontario, or somewhere southeast. Great Lakes. I don't know if she's American or Canadian, but Great Lakes area. Anyway, she's Ojibwe, and so these go through the 13 Ojibwe moons. There are variations on the 13 Ojibwe moons, or the 13 Anishinaabe moons, depending on which First Nation you're talking about, but these are the Ojibwe ones. And she talks about the spirits of animals. She talks about how to connect with animal spirits responsibly as a white reader, because I think she knew a lot of her audience would be white. She talks a lot about various plant and animal medicines and various ways they can help us heal from whatever needs healing, and starting to heal the earth a little bit. And it's just, it is a very nurturing book, I think. Is a good word for it. It's a very caring, gentle sort of book. So that even when she's talking about, you know, something like cultural appropriation, it's not harsh or anything. She's very thoughtful and thorough, I think. And talks about how to do things respectfully. And yeah, there's just a lot of medicine in this book, and it's really very sweet. Next up is Green Tea and Jasmine, a deck that's an acquired taste, a bit unpalatable, good for you, so you continue to try it. I don't know if I think green tea is unpalatable, but I think jasmine is unpalatable. So, but I agree that green tea can be an acquired taste. It is good for you, though. I do like it. So for that, I went with the Death Doula Oracle, because it is definitely an acquired taste, and probably some people would find it unpalatable. Maybe a lot of people. Oh, everything keeps falling over. It's going to be a very clangy video, many thuds. Oh well. I think it's beautiful, but it's maybe not conventionally aesthetically pleasing. And so maybe it puts people off a little bit. It can be a bit pokey. You know, it's not quite as gentle as some other decks. It can make you a bit uncomfortable. But I think it's good to think about death every now and again. I think it's good to be able to sit with the idea that we will all die. And to be able to plan for it, mostly so that family members don't have to when they're mourning. That's a very helpful and important thing. And yeah, but yes, I think dealing with death and ideas around death can be very helpful. But I do understand that this deck might be a bit of an acquired taste. And then the book I picked for this is As Long as Grass Grows, Dina Giulio Whitaker's book. The subtitle is The Indigenous Fight for Environmental Justice from Colonization to Standing Rock. And it is phenomenal. But it is, I mean, history books are just generally an acquired taste for some people. I get that. They're not for, like, not everybody's gonna love them. But I do think if you're at all interested in environmentalism, this book is so important. It's such important history to know. And it's history that's usually excluded, so people don't know, but it's so important and so hugely relevant to what we're dealing with the planet and climate change and everything right now. And also just learning how to treat people like people and interact with each other in better ways and interact with the planet in better ways. I've read it twice. I will read it again someday. It's so good. But I know history is one of those things that people might read because it's good for them. I do think this would be good for you, whoever you are. It's a good book. Next up is Long Island Iced Tea. Fun, low-key, not overly serious with a wild side. I don't know if this is low-key. It seems like a lot of work went into this, but it's fun and it's got a wild side. Excuse me. And this is The Abyssal Tarot by Shelley Corbett, and the guidebook is written by Stephen Album. And it's beautiful, but it's wild. Like it's not a tape deck. Oh, nudity warning. Sorry, late. There's some of that in this. It's not a tame deck. There's a wild side to this one for sure. So I'm not sure this entirely fills the prompt because it's fun. It's not low-key. It might be a little bit serious, but it definitely has a wild side. These were all photographs that were taken underwater, which must have been a lot of work. But they're, yeah, that's maybe not low-key. I don't remember this card. It's a little bit of a sheen. So that's Long Island Iced Tea. And the book I chose for this is The Little Prairie Book of Berries, because it is fun and low-key and not overly serious. And if you harvest berries wild, it's literally got a wild side. Yeah, sorry, I'm ridiculous today. I spent the day at a data conference, and I have to spend my day off tomorrow at a data conference. So now I'm just done. I'm done. Anyway, conferences are a whole thing. Yeah, so back to the book. It's fun. It's not serious, but There's a bit about Hascat berries, how to grow them. Hascat berries, they're also called honeyberries. If you've never had them, they are delicious. And if you have the chance to go to U Pick Farm and pick some, you should do that because they're so good. They're so good. But you can't find them in stores at the moment because they are, the skin I think is too delicate that it breaks too easily on them. So if you tried to like transport them en masse, you'd end up with a big mess. But they are delicious. And so this book has, which other prairie berries? Saskatoons, which are my all-time favorite. Choke cherries. I have to use some of those recipes this year because we have so many choke cherries around and I don't know what to do with them because trying to eat them straight is not pleasant. They're so sour. Currants, sea buckthorn berries, love those, and sour cherries. And we have all of these things in my neighborhood, so I'll have to break that out this summer as well. And then the last one is Lavender and Chamomile Latte, a deck to help you unwind before bed. And I picked this one, the Margarete Petersen Tarot. It might not be conventionally like relaxing or soothing or something, but I use it for dream work. So it's my bedtime deck. Because you can do like, I've never done path working exactly with this deck, but I imagine you could. Probably be quite good for that, actually. But it is a, yeah, it is a very dreamy deck to me. It's very, oh, it's so beautiful. There's a lot going on in the images that you can just sit with and feel and imagine. And so it's my dream work deck. So yeah, that's Lavender and Chamomile. And for books, I picked one that I actually haven't finished yet. I started it. A Self-Loved Month of Meditations by Anna Fable. She's got a YouTube channel called Reiki with Anna. If you've heard of that, it started getting really big, I think, during the pandemic. And it's a really beautiful channel. Like, I've never done Reiki, so I don't really know much about how it works and all that, but her channel is so beautiful and so relaxing. And I do watch that before bed often to help me go to sleep. And also, she's got a lot of really good themed videos that just deal with like various emotional and practical issues. It's good. So anyway, it's a slim little book. It's not very expensive, with the meditation that you can read through every day. And I've only done, I think, the first couple, but I liked them. And they're good for the evening, and I will do more of them. Yes, I will. One of these days. Maybe tonight. Who knows? I'll be optimistic and say tonight. We'll see. And that is my tea shop tarot. Those are my tea shop tarot decks and books. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you all next time.